Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Do not be fooled by that fancy name. It's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And today, it's a new friend, Aaron, and an old baseball player. So we're going back to early 20th century. The great Cubs pitcher and Hall of Famer, Mordecai Three Finger Brown. Three Finger we'll get into a little bit, but it's a nickname because back then they told it like it was. Anyway, so Three Finger Brown is born in Indiana, 1876. By the late 1800s, he's pitching in some leagues, semi-pro leagues in Indiana. But as a child, had been the victim of a bad farm accident where he lost a finger, and then later broke his hand or broke his fingers, and so he had half of his index finger, and the rest of his fingers were broken or had been broken and then curved. So we'll see pictures of that later. But as a result, he was able to throw the ball in an unorthodox manner, causing like curveballs that later Ty Cobb said was one of the hardest pitches to hit. So he pitches for 1 year for St. Louis, and then he comes back in a trade to the Cubs in what year is it? 1904, and begins to become one of the best pitchers in baseball. Has a Hall of Fame run with one of the greatest teams of all time, the Cubs, in the late 1904 to 1910 or 11. They're one of the best teams in baseball. He's the winner of 2 World Series, and in his later years, he moves on to Cincinnati. We'll talk about that. And then he becomes one of the players that moves over to the Federal League for a couple of years. He manages half the season in St. Louis in the Federal League. And then he ultimately comes back to the Cubs to finish out his career, manages a little bit in the minor leagues, and then spends the rest of his days in Terre Haute, Indiana. So let me bring on our guest. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Good morning to you as well, sir. Thank you so much for the invite.
Well, thank you. I have been watching your channel, and I went to your channel originally because I was directed by a friend. We'll get to that a little bit later, but I've been enjoying you and John Mangini going back and forth with your cards, not only the cards, but the knowledge, which is wonderful. And if you watch this channel, I like to go through the, not just the cards, but also the history of the players and the history of the games and whatever stuff comes up. Because to me, it's fascinating, the history part of it, not just the art of the cards, but the history. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your card collecting background, and then we'll get into how you started your channel.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, that's been a blast going back and forth with John. That's been humbling that the president of the sports card market here and industry is taking some time to have some banter with me. But yeah, I've been collecting cards since back in the 80s. Born in 77, started probably picking up cards in 84, 85. By 87, that was probably all of my extra money was going to that. In fact, I got my first tobacco card in 1987. So I always, I kind of share it, like you said, it's the story, it's the history. That's always been interesting to me. So Christmas of 87, I got a Christy Mathewson T206 card, and that was pretty much my entire Christmas budget. But my mom let me pick what I wanted, and so that's where I went. So yeah.
So you and I have never met in person, but I know you were at Strongsville. Yep. And somebody who I became more friends with in Strongsville is our mutual friend Jason, who you're doing some work with now on YouTube. Yep. And big, huge fan of Jason. And then he was in the house that we had, for the National that they called the Frat House. Yeah. And so he said to me, you got to talk to this guy. You got to have this guy on your show, because not only the cards, but also like you're simpatico in terms of like history being an important part of your collection. So shout out to our friend Jason.
Yes.
So describe for me how you go from being like a card collector lurker guy to, like,
Yeah.
having this channel that, is pretty damn impressive so far. Let me
Uh,
say that.
Thank you. That's very, very kind. Um, really, I was kind of toying with the idea. I think when you are in the hobby enough and you find YouTube and you find different folks that collect kind of, how you collect, and um, probably sometimes I watch the channels that collect exactly how I don't collect, because I like to kind of challenge my brain and, understand how different people think. So I always find that interesting, and learn about new ideas and products and, cards. But um, yeah, I had the actual channel kind of set up as a YouTube account prior to Strongsville. But when I went, just the encouragement, and met Jason there actually. My buddy Joe that I was with walked up and he's like, "Hey, we watch your channel." And he's like, "Really? I've got." He always jokes. He's like, "I've got like 10 people watching, and you're one of them. That's amazing." So uh, it's
Yeah, I, it's those are always kind of fun. There was one. I think I've told this story before, but it cracks me up. The guy comes up to me and he's with his wife. He says, "Hey, you're Dan. I watch your channel all the time." And his wife butts in. She says, "Yeah, your face is on my TV screen all the time." I'm like, "I'm sorry."
no, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, so you'll see. I mean, you're going to see that as as you go to more and more shows, you get like people come up to you. Sometimes it's the dealers too. There's a dealer that said, "Hey, I sold you a card, and then you showed it on your channel,"
Yeah.
and that's really cool. I've actually become kind of good friends with Paul from Newport because he's been, I've been going to his shop, and then, but he's been watching the channel, so I guess he talks to me about the channel when I see him, which is fun. So
That's
anyway, enough about me. So
no.
how is it that Mordecai Brown becomes one of the, and we'll see your collection a little bit. It's quite extensive and very impressive. But how does he become one of the guys at UPC?
So for me, I would say it's, I think we all would wish we could just collect, Ruth and Cobb and all the monsters. But I think one of the connections I have to John is that we both have this interest and excitement towards getting some of these rare, unique, sets, and representing something from, a collection that maybe you've never seen. And to pick up a Ruth like that is probably going to, cost you your house.
Yeah.
So when you can find another player, I call them like the periphery, Hall of Famers. I like somebody like Mordecai Brown, who's an amazing player, but he's not that inner circle household name. So his stuff is a fraction of the price. And then I dive in. I mean, he's got the third lowest career ERA in MLB.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Indiana, so as am I. That's super cool to me. He's just a good person from everything you can tell. His entire story, overcoming the injury. Like you said, it's actually two injuries that most people don't understand, but because they usually just summarize and say his hand was hurt, but it was he had broken fingers while he was recovering from having fingers cut off.
Yep.
Insane. So just his story is inspiring and interesting. So it's kind of where I got drawn in, and his cards are fun.
And he checks a lot of boxes in terms of history too, in terms of like being like the staff ace of that Cubs team that tinkers to Everett's chance and all that.
Yeah.
And then he ends up being one of the main names in the Federal League, which
Yes.
is really something that I've been fascinated with over the years. So we'll talk about it. But he ends up pitching for the Brooklyn Tip Tops, which is one of the teams that I'm also fascinated with because they played right over in Brooklyn, Washington Park, an area that I'm very familiar with. So he's not cheap though. He's not Babe Ruth, but he's not cheap. So
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, pre-war anything's not cheap, I guess, to a degree, but
yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. But let's start looking at some baseball cards. So the first thing I did, I took your Deech postcard and put it first because you did this for me. You took a picture of the postcard itself, which is a fantastic photo, but then the close up on the right, where you can see, the three finger thing where he lost that finger that is holding the ball there. and then he's got the other ones wrapped around. It's almost like a change-up grip, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming his pitches sort of came like change-ups, and they were called curves because 120 years ago they didn't really call them change-ups. But
Right.
so that's the what we're dealing with here in terms of the physical issue. So as we normally do in this channel, we'll go through my cards first. There aren't that many of them. The T206 on the left, Piedmont. I'm wearing my Piedmont shirt.
Nice.
It is a 2MK, so presents pretty nicely. I like the color on this. There's some real issues like next to his face. So I think if this was graded now, it might not get a 2. It's more. It really should be a 1. But there's writing on the back, which is where you get the MK from. There's that P stamp, and then there's pitcher. So in case you didn't know, but I love this card because it speaks to me like early 20th century. The sweater, the Cubs, his hair, the look. I mean, it really speaks to me, this card. So I've had that. It's one of my earlier T206s. Got that off of somebody from Twitter, which doesn't exist anymore. And on the right, my friend Sean from Toronto, who's been on the show a few times, he sold me this 1915 Crackerjack Mordecai Brown. I know you have the 14 and 15, and we'll see that. But I wanted one. I wanted a Federals card, and of course Brown pitched for in 15. He pitched for Chicago in the Federal League after in 14 having been on St. Louis as the player manager, fired midway through the season, and then he comes to Brooklyn. So by 15, they should have had Brooklyn on this card. It's disappointing to me that they have St. Louis because he had already been gone from there. But anyway, that picture is a familiar picture, which we'll see again. And then one more. This is a recent pickup. This is, in fact, the debut of this card on this channel. This is the 1913 Fatima team card set of the Cincinnati Reds, because for one season, Mordecai Brown pitched for the Reds. I'm assuming, I don't know the story about this, but I'm assuming he came because the manager was Joe Tinker, his longtime teammate and friend with the Cubs. But the reason I bought this card, shout out to our mutual friend Orlando. Orlando taught me the importance of this card because both Almeida and Marsands, the two original Cuban baseball players, are actually on this card. And that's why I had been searching for this and bid for it in the recent REA auction and won and got it in about 2 days after I paid, which was nice. And then, of course, Brown is in it as like a bonus for me. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. So let's see. Where's Brown? He is right here. He's that person right there, Mordecai Brown. So anyway, so those are my cards. I've done enough talking. So let's start with you.
You are good. So I tried to group them a little bit just to make them into something that was logical. So I paired the T205, which is still sitting ungraded. I'm not the biggest grading person in the world. So, if I can snag a card and just keep it in a top loader and take a look at it, I'm happy with that. And then the 3 T206s. So some of those are a little bit older, and the middle one's actually a neat recurring image, and actually I guess all 3 of them are to some degree. But yeah, I love cards in that kind of grade. A nice 1 up to maybe a 2 or 3 for most of my cards is where I live.
So he has 3 cards in the T206 set. The portrait, which we've shown, and yours is also a nice example of that. And then he's got the 2. They call one Cubs on shirt and one Chicago on shirt, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I like those, and those are definitely familiar poses. The Cubs on shirt, I think, is used a few times, and Chicago on shirt is definitely used in one of the bigger cards that I've got in this show and tell as well. So yeah, it's a good one. And those are, when I can find them in a nicer grade, I do. I haven't gone into like collecting different backs and things like that. And T206 could be an endless journey, I think, if you really took it to the extreme. But
yeah, we had a T206 set completist a couple months ago, our friend Brett.
yeah,
And yeah, he sort of, he's a very smart guy, also a rational collector. So he didn't go crazy, but he did do like multiple backs and like did one player, all of his cards with the various backs and stuff. So these are all, mine's a Piedmont. What do you got here? You got Piedmont and Sweet Cap. And
yeah,
then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're all Piedmont and Sweet Cap. Nothing exotic.
I have tried to buy that T205 Brown a number of times and failed because it's a kind of sneaky expensive, that card. It's because the red is beautiful and it's a nice little portrait. So that's one. It's funny because I bought it. Wilson Franks was the show last week with Matt. I bought a Wilson Franks card this week. This happens to me now in these shows. I'll be like, man, I want that card. And then the next week, so next time I do my my show where I bring out all my recent acquisitions, I'll give you a shout out because that T205 is probably going to be one of them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I never like to see YouTube and the community influence or influences, because I feel like that has a negative connotation, but they definitely inspire. So yeah, I'm guilty of charge as well.
Yeah, and it's what the wonderful thing about this channel is I get to see collections like yourself, where it's humbling for me. I've got three cards of this player, really only two and one team card, and we'll go into how impressive your collection is. But it's inspiring, and I see stuff that I want, and then I can I learn more. So it's not I'm not teaching on this channel. I'm learning just as much as the viewers. So anyway, here we go. We got the two Cracker Jacks and a Sweet Cap pin. So tell me about the 14 and the 15.
Yeah, and so I will say, one of the blessings, I guess, of searching and going after the kind of player collector mentality is that it lets you dive into different sets and you kind of know who you're targeting. So the idea of getting one from every set, I'm realistic, I will never accomplish that. But similar to John, I do like having the crazy wide variety of things and finding, one from everything. So 14, that's my only 14 that I have in my entire collection. I probably have half a dozen 15s. Population grading wise, it looks like it's, maybe a third less is 14s, but 14s feel like they're really expensive compared to 15s. So maybe unfairly so. I don't know. Maybe 15s are a good deal, but I figured if I'm going to jump on a 14, I saw that come up and I'm like, yeah, this is probably the time to just go ahead and check the box.
Are you a member of the there's a Facebook group for Cracker Jack collectors?
Yeah, I'm on there. Yeah.
The funny thing, I'm not even sure if it's a joke or if they're serious when some of these guys are like, 14s are Cracker Jacks, 15s are reprints. It's like what? Reprints? What are you talking about? There are cards in 14. There are players who the 14 and 15 are different cards, but in many cases, like with our friend Three Finger here, it's the same basic card, and then on the backs are different because they're facing different directions.
Yeah, that's literally the only difference, though. I mean, I guess to a point, they're sort of right. I mean, what Mathewson and not many others are the ones that look different, but for the most part, it's kind of the same gosh darn card. I mean, yeah.
Well, and they even, like I said before, they put Federal on it, which I don't, because he was gone midway through the season. So I wanted a Brooklyn Tip Top, but oh well.
Yeah. Eddie Collins is one I've looked at too that has, at least they name the team differently. So,
well, Benny Koff played for Brooklyn for the entire 15 season, won the batting crown. His 15 has him on Indianapolis, which is the team he had played for in 14. So that's a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, sure.
So now we have the four different. Speaking of getting cards, multiple cards from the same set.
Yeah.
What's the set, and why are the 4 cards 4 different colors?
So E98, which is I feel like famous for a couple reasons. One is the fact they've got all the different colors, and I'm sure someone can correct me. I haven't found a true consistent rule of thumb that blue is 3 times harder than orange and vice versa. It feels like red is maybe the most available. Um, some of these, when you look at the populations, there's 10 or 20 graded, and others there's 60 or 70, but none of them are super easy to find. But then you had the Black Swamp find, which kind of exploded this, and my red one there is not labeled as Black Swamp, but I'm not in the market typically for an 8. That is a freakish outlier of my collection. I'm like A's and 1s is where I live, and
Yeah,
I
and I
land
think
this
my
8.
highest graded like tobacco card is a 4. So, yeah,
Which is phenomenal.
that's a little crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think if it weren't for Black Swamp, that card would be $40,000. But because all of a sudden you have a population of 25 8s out there,
yeah.
it's still not cheap by any means, but it's somewhat in the realm of reasonable. So yeah, I was thrilled. I mean, that's one of those items when you see it come up, you either say I'm willing to pay what's there, or I probably just won't have it,
Yeah.
because some of those don't sell yearly. So
walk me through if you recall, where you got each one of these, just for illustrative purposes.
and those they might be all eBay, honestly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just daily hunting, something pops up and you gotta jump at it. Um, I'm
Well,
definitely on auction sites though as well, so I'm sure a lot of us are REA and Golden and some of those. So
I am here to speak the truth about the saved search feature on eBay being a wonderful thing and also a bad thing.
yes.
But I actually had a great, fantastic um, card come through that I've been looking for several years on eBay this week, and the guy, I think, didn't quite know what he had. I It was an auction that had like 2 or 3 days with no bids.
Hmm.
So I emailed him and said, "Look, what do you want for this?" He said, "Make me an offer." So I made him an offer, and he took it. And I got I'm not going to give it away, but it's one of those ones that I've been looking for a long time. So excited! It's also going to be a show,
Nice.
its own
Nice.
show. All right. So again, 3 fantastic cards from 3 terrific sets. I know the one on the right is the Ramley, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you got the Mecca, and then
Yep.
you got what is it called? What's the one on top called? I can't remember. It's a threefold, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
T202 series, but
Yeah.
yeah. And the T202, so that one's almost more interesting because you get different varieties, but the middle image is the Athletics infield, so you get Frank Baker and Eddie Collins on it as well. So I like to kind of sneak in, double dip on a cool card when I can. So you get Mordecai, and then a player that you probably don't know, and then a couple extra Hall of Famers in the middle. So that's a fun one.
Who's the other player on that? I recognize that.
It is. Grab it.
Is it Graham or something?
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
Geo Graham.
George Graham. I had his T205 for a while, but I ended up selling it. So the Mecca double folder does have another player on the back, right? Oh, Hoffman. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That was one too that I've seen a few of them come up in lower grades, but that one's a 6. So
yeah,
that becomes a little bit more of a decision. The 1s and 2s you can get for very reasonable.
yeah.
So, those are easy to pick up, I think, if you're patient and find one that's to your liking. But yeah, 6 is kind of cool to have. And the Ramley is crazy.
The Ramley, speaking of not being cheap, I only have one card from that set. I've showed it a few times on this channel. It's the Crazy Hair Maddie McIntyre. And I got a deal on it, according to friends, and I paid like 2 something for a fairly obscure player.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what Mordecai runs. But
Well,
yeah, so tell us about how'd you get this the Ramley?
and I wish I had more interesting stories on some of these. It was really just watching, and
Yeah,
like you said, it saves searches, and when it comes up, that's one of those things. If you're getting it because you were looking for a good deal, you're patient, you wait. When you're getting it because you have to add it to your collection because you're borderline obsessed, um, you have to just jump. And yeah, it was more than the common player that you added, and it's in brutal shape.
yeah,
But if it was in nice shape, it would be out of my range.
yeah,
So I always argue on my channel. I said, people say there's only 10 nines or tens of these cards, and I look at the pop report the exact opposite, and I say there's only 3 authentic and 2 ones. I really am looking at a pop 5 that I can afford, because
yeah.
if that's a 5, I'm out. I can't do it.
Yeah, if that's a 5, it's a 5-digit card.
Yeah, yeah, and that was not even a common card because of the condition it's in. So I'm happy to pay my hundreds and have one that looks like him with some gold missing on the corners.
Well, you speak the truth because if you're going to have an extensive collection, and I'm going to do a show in the future about people, collection focus. What's your collection focus? And I think you and I have similar approaches, that we have multiple different players that we collect.
Yeah,
So you can't have the 4 and the 5 and the 6 on every card of when you're collecting so many different players or teams or whatever. So you
yeah,
have to. I don't think it's settling for something. I think it's just taking the opportunity to buy a card
mhm,
that is not going to break your bank, and then moving on to the next card. Because to me, this is a beautiful card.
yeah,
It's got all the flaws and everything, but the flaws don't mean anything if the card means something to you. And so I feel like, when you say that Ramley card, if you waited for a 5, you would never own it. I'd
yeah,
rather own the card.
yeah.
And so to me, that's a beautiful card. Ramley's a beautiful set, and I think you made a proper judgment on that. So now we've got like 6 tobacco cards here, right? Essentially,
So it's actually
or,
6.
or caramel,
Yeah,
caramel, yeah,
yeah, yeah. I always say I like caramel more than tobacco, but
caramel.
um, yeah, they're cool, and I think this illustrates the exact point. Any of those in like a 4 or 5, you'd have to trade the entire run of 6 to get the
Yeah,
one. And so I'm really happy that they're all 1.5s and A's, and they're well loved, well seasoned, but they're so old. So yeah, it's E90-1, E90-3, which is kind of fun and cool. I love that gold background. I think that thing just offsets and
oh yeah,
looks. E91s are always silly. There's really like probably 3 images and they just swap names. um, but we all do it. We all want the name on there. So,
yeah,
it's fun to get the Mordecai.
yep. Which
E93
which
looks,
uh which set is he in that the E91-3? Right? This was it. A, B, and C.
so that's set B. He might be in more than one set. I'm not sure.
No,
Are they
generally
only in
speaking,
one?
yeah, they're in one. The teams
Okay.
are chopped up, because I know
Okay.
my Joe Wood in that is in, I think, C,
Okay.
and then Larry Doyle might be in B. I forget, but and then I love the green on the bottom left. That's the standard, right?
Yes, that's the E93.
Right.
Yeah, and it has a very E98 feel, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that card, and it is funny because it's creased up and it's a well deserving one, but there's nothing. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
take a look at that one, but that's, to me, that's phenomenal. The
Yeah.
corners, like, yeah, it got dinged, but that's everything the card's supposed to look like, and it's well loved. The back's in good shape. Like, I love that.
Yeah. No, it's the color is really nice on that,
Yeah,
and so you didn't it's not washed out or anything. And then you got a couple of nice ones there at the bottom. The red is the Philadelphia caramel, a card. I don't even have a card in that set. And the bottom right is Williams, right?
Yeah.
Am I reading that right? Yeah.
Yeah. E103 is brutally tough.
Yeah.
So that's another one that you look at and you say, all right, it's got, fought the dog and lost and the sides chewed on. But I'm just happy to have it. So yeah, that's a cool one. It's blank back. The E96, can I show you that one too? Just because
Sure.
the image, when you get like the hand,
right,
they tried to do a good job on that.
Yeah.
I
think
they
gave him a little more index finger than he actually has.
Yeah. But the fact you get kind of that zoomed in image for it being artwork, basically, I think is super cool. So yeah, I love the caramels.
So Sporting Life is another set that I really like. He's got two variations here, the blue and the pastel.
Yeah.
These cards are also, these Sporting Life cards to me are really reasonably priced compared with other cards that have similar images. The only card I have from this set is an Addy Joss, and it was I think it's a 3, and I got it at a price that I couldn't believe, because if you got his 3 portrait and it's each 06, it would have been like 3 times as much.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a deal. And I feel like these two also, when there's two, one is usually way more scarce than the other. So
yeah, which is the blue the rare one?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I think so. Honestly, for him, I can't remember. I've looked at these so much, and there's so many. Addy Joss is a gorgeous card in that set. So
yeah,
I would love to add that. I think it's funny people are critical that there's no hat. Like, I don't want to see a baseball player's hair. Like, I think it's cool. I think it's of the era. It's of the time. And
yes,
so I love it. Yeah, I think they're excellent. I believe the blue is more rare for him.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's universally true.
And then we have Famous and Bar, which is that M1, was it M1015?
Yeah, that one is actually this one doesn't get labeled according to the flip. So that'll let's release the anti-grading establishment on that to criticize that. I don't know if it is just Famous and Barb, but I think there's 4 different backs.
Right.
And then you've got blank backs and all the different ways they're labeled. So
yeah, you could hurt your bank account going after the full run of those. Yeah. Because I'm sure he's got various different, gimbals and all the other backs that got produced in that run of cards. I know Dave Blue Jacket 66 has a video where he lists all the different backs and which, by like most common to least common. And really, really instructive video. I probably should find it and link it below, because it's very, very helpful to understand what the backs mean and which are harder to get.
Yeah.
So we're back to the Deech, which we showed before, which is a wonderful postcard series. Yeah. And off camera, I said I do have one card in this set. It's what's his name, George, the pitcher from the Tigers. So anyway, I thought Deech postcards were only Tigers, but apparently not.
I actually see that comment frequently. People will say it's the Tiger set, and I'm sitting here with my Mordecai Brown saying like, oh, I know there's at least some Cubs, but I think they did the whole Cubs team in that same range of era.
Right.
The story of this card is actually interesting, because I bought a card from a guy, and he said it was like a Facebook, just kind of side deal with somebody, and he said, who do you collect? So I sent him a list, and it's probably been a year, and he just emailed me several months ago and said, hey, by the way, I'm thinking about moving this. Any interest? And I looked at it. I was like, oh my God, like that's I've not seen that before. Yeah, definitely interested. And he was very reasonable. Just shot back and said, it looks like comps are about this. Does that seem fair? And I was like, yeah, it seems really fair. So that's
nice.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, of all the cards in my collection, if they don't have like an emotional, connection, if they're not from like mom and dad and stuff growing up, that is one of the coolest cards.
Yep.
The image, I mean, just seeing his hand like that to me is just mind blowing. And even the back is super clean, and the write up of it is really, really interesting. So, I mean, that's
why we collect.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now the other one is thing I don't novelty cutlery. I don't even know what this set is.
I barely do as well. It's a postcard set. There's, I don't know if they're all Hall of Famers, but there's some huge names in the set.
What year is it?
07 to 09.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think there's actually a couple right now, depending when you release this. There might be some actively on REA. They get ugly in a hurry. So the 2.5 is actually one of the lowest graded.
Right.
And the image is pretty good. You kind of get a little bit of, hand image to it. They tend to be in good shape, and they're postcard back, so they're
right,
kind of traditional looking that way. But I think there's 10 or 11 of those graded. So, again, my screening of, okay, I'll never see this again, and I need one of the lowest graded ever. So there we go. Let's go after it.
REA just ended an auction last week that I bought that I got the Fatima card on.
Yeah.
And they just opened a new one like yesterday, I think. So we're recording this Saturday morning. This will probably go live Saturday afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Maybe early evening, depends on my when I can spend some time working through it. But the newest REA auction, I haven't even had time to look through it. And I literally just got the cards from the last one. But my feeling about their auctions is, of course, you're going to pay the buyer's premium. You're going to pay up a little bit. But you can find some stuff like the Fatima. Like I put together the number that I paid for this is pretty competitive with other prices I've seen, even with their premium. And that's a better copy of what I've seen before. So I don't know. REAs, they get some heavy hitters, but you can find some really nice stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it a lot. I think the chance to find something like that, I've never seen that on eBay in years. So yeah, if you want to get it, you got to go on the auction houses and dig and be patient.
So this another, just that picture speaks to me. Early 20th century baseball, 100%.
Yeah.
And so what do we have in front of us? Sporting News.
Yep, Sporting News M101. This is the -2.
Okay.
Yeah, big old monster. So I know sometimes when you get them and you're kind of doing screenshots, it's tough to get perspective, but these are full page, like magazine type of items. I've actually got one that's not slabbed, and I mean, it scares the living heck out of me to have to move it because like this thing bends and tears like a magazine page, but it's 100 years old. So.
Well, I some people are in the hobby are not big fans of oversized cards, but I am. I'm not a fan of them because it's a pain in the ass to find spots for them. But I don't go against them, and I have some amazing big cards. Like I just got a new Bob Feller 39 Gaudy premium. Big thing, but absolutely beautiful. Just like this. It's like it's almost like a piece of art that you would put on your wall, Yeah. So putting it up as a display, I think if you limit yourself to the regular size cards, you're limiting what you can have in your collection. So I think you and I are both big card people.
Absolutely, yeah. And when you look at like your display behind you and the display behind me, it's nice to have some depth and some difference. If you just had a whole bunch of slabs mounted on your wall, it's neat in itself, but it adds some dimension and some dynamic perspective to your collection for sure. So I'm with you.
All right. So these are not slabbed.
Correct.
These are the ones you're worried about, right?
Yeah, no, they're lower cost.
They make these giant.
So the one is actually comes in an envelope, and
Oh, okay.
it's an entire set. So I put him on top. It actually, unfortunately, it was unopened when I got it, but I wanted to open it to see it, and the one got a little
Whoops.
bit of damage.
Sorry, I'm trying to. My computer got a little. Oh, I see. Okay.
It actually, as part of the envelope, got stuck to it.
Oh, okay.
Um, so who was that? William Frederick Bullet Georges. But it's a little $15 insert, but it's kind of like to the point of the oversized cards and items. If you're trying to decorate a sports room or a hobby room or something, I think it's super cool to have these and
Yeah,
put them on display.
another great shot too with the Cubs, the uniform.
Yeah.
And so let's move on. So
Yeah.
he gets to the end of his career, and we've got some post playing days here. Bottom left is the 50 to 55 Callahan.
Yep.
You got the 60 and 61 Fleer. They didn't do him any favors with that 61 Fleer.
I know. We were joking. Like I'm surprised he lived old enough to be looking like he does in that Fleer. They really caught him at an old timers game or something.
Well, I should say that his he lived to 1948, which I guess he was 71. I think is the number we had from the Baseball Reference page. He passed away in early 1948. He was elected to the Hall of Fame Veterans Committee in 1949, which is sad in a way.
Yeah.
But when I was reading his bio, he may have been aware that he was going to get in, which, in that sense, yeah, he wasn't present for the ceremony, or, he didn't get I don't know if they even did phone calls back then. But at least he knew he had reached that level of immortality. So those 67 Venezuela cards are expensive.
Yeah, they're tough. They're in my wheelhouse because they're tough to find. They're rare. Little extra, kind of special value and story to them instantly because of where they come from. But they're always in bad shape. So I think that one has like a 2 with a mark on it or something. So yeah, they're probably priced like a low grade T206, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm a playing days guy, and I have a few minor exceptions, and that would be one of them.
Yeah.
The other one is the Propagandist Montiel, which has some guys that are retired. I have the Hubble and Cronin, both of whom at that point have been a few years out of the game. Not out of the game, but not players anymore. They moved on to the front office. But I don't know. I can't see spending the amount of money that they want for like a Ted Williams from 1967. Anyway, the bottom middle, the yellow card is pretty cool. What do we got there?
Yeah, so I always point that one out, and I love unique images. I love the write up on the back being a cool story, and I love when there's either like a misspelling or something of that nature. So it's just a 63 Bazooka. I mean, it's probably a $10 card.
Yeah.
But it is a 3-fingered brown instead of 3-finger. So I just think it's kind of a silly little anomaly. That's probably the only time I've seen in print that he's 3-fingered brown. And on the back it says 3-finger and gives a little write up. So I mean, those are always kind of fun. But yeah, it's a neat set. So I figured
for $10, you can't go wrong.
Right.
So we got some modern stuff here. What do we have here? Because I don't know anything about modern cards. So what do we have here?
I don't either. Honestly, it's more like the obsession of you want to get as many representations. And when I look at the modern, a lot of them have really neat stories on the back. A lot of them have images you don't see all the time. And I like the idea of that being included because the kids that are currently 9 and 10 and 12, they're not looking for these players, but they're going to come across it. And hopefully the fact it's got a diamond or a ruby or whatever inserted in makes it valuable. So maybe they take the time and read it and learn. And I kind of grouped those with the 2 cards from like the 80s, the greatest and all-time greats kind of stuff, because that's I can remember being 13, 12, whatever, reading the back of those and learning about their best season and their career, and that's how we did it.
You make really excellent points, and you know, I'm a playing days guy snob, but you know, it's true. When in the early 70s, when I was a little kid, I had the all-time great set from TCMA.
Yep.
And I learned about those players, and then I wanted to get cards of theirs from their playing days. So
yeah,
I think that's a gateway into vintage.
mm-hmm.
And what you're saying with regard to, like, you know, old time guys in modern sets, yeah, why not? I mean, people have always said that, you know, in the conversation about, you know, are vintage baseball cards going to go away because there's a bunch of old guys and no one's ever heard of these or seen these guys play before. Yeah, you know, when I'm gone, whenever that is, you know, I never saw Babe Ruth play or Ty Cobb or you know, Mordecai Brown, any of these guys. In fact, the only time I ever saw Mantle play was in the early 70s when he used to play in the old timers games.
Yeah.
So, you know, but these are the guys I've always collected. So I don't know. Is there a 14-year-old kid out there picking up that you know, terrific 75 card with the, you know, with the 75th anniversary and looking and being, you know, interested enough to look into Mordecai Brown and then go out and buy a T206? I don't know. But, you know, the fact that it exists as a possibility, I think, is really a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I have not been clear enough on that in terms of my talking about getting kids into the hobby. It's not something that that I've really focused on. So I think you really serve the community well by saying that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's my hope. I'm the same way. I mean, we're all investing things that, you know, enough dollars that it matters and enough time that it's, you know, a legitimate hobby. And yeah, we hope the next generation grasps. And that is one of the nice things of the rare things. When there's 30 or 10 of them, I don't need to have 14,000 people that want it. I need 30 or 10. So yeah, it does help.
All right, so we have so we've reached our last slide.
Yeah.
It's funny because I should say to our viewers that I started to do this on all the player and you know, where I can find a book that's really important, I'll put it at the end. And so I did that, and then you showed me before we even went on camera that you actually have the book.
Yeah, that's one that I did snag, and I've been slowly reading through it. But like I said, it's that connection we have of, you know, it's the real history. I did do digging. Wikipedia doesn't tell you if he was married or anything like that. He was married for 45 years.
Yes.
He was married between his time in St. Louis and Chicago. And, you know, you hear things about Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb and Rogers Hornsby. You don't hear anything about Mordecai Brown. I still collect those other guys, of course, because their story is still important.
So what we have here on the left is,
it's nice when you can embrace like who they were.
I'm sorry.
We're good. I think
I lost you there for a second. Okay. So what we have on the left is the Perez Steel. Tell me about that, because it's a beautiful artwork there.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting when you look at those. Obviously, I don't have a Mordecai Brown autograph or anything, so and Perez Steel wouldn't have overlapped with his life whatsoever. So, for me, I pick up the players I collect. So I've got several Perez Steels, but I do think there's definitely a degree of just artwork components when you see it, and it's, you know, iconic. It really is the that image. You say, I see the image over and over and over.
Yeah. That's
what's on the Perez Steel. So it's cool to see the artistic interpretation of the actual photograph.
Yep. And so what I should say about the book is that Cindy Thompson is actually like a cousin of Mordecai Brown. She's actually part of the family. And when they dedicated a statue in his hometown, not Terre Haute, but his birth town, I guess within the last 20 years or so, they had family members there, which I thought was cool, including Sidney Thompson. And Scott Brown, the other author, is I guess he's the head of the Mordecai Brown Historical Society. So, you got some people here who know pretty much everything you need to know about the player. So I would obviously recommend that book. And it says forward by Ferguson Jenkins.
Isn't that cool?
And Fergie Jenkins is fortunately still with us. He has an active social media presence. He was on Twitter, and he's on Facebook, and he runs his own. He has I guess it's like a scholarship fund or whatever. So he's working with the community. But of course, he's the great Cubs pitcher of the late 20th century, and Mordecai Brown is the great Cubs pitcher of the early 20th century. So I have not read the foreword. I would like to do that, but I'm assuming there's some commonality, being Chicago, the main pitcher for Chicago. So there we go. That is our last slide, and that is the Mordecai Brown Show. So, Aaron, I really appreciate you coming on. Again, shout out to our friend Jason, who had the idea for this, and he was totally correct. So good for him, good for us. I will link, obviously, to your YouTube channel, which has only been around for less than a year, right? At this point.
Yeah, my first video was a Strongsville pickups. I really hadn't been active until that, so I came back and I picked up 4 or 5 cards. So I shared that, and the community was very gracious and kind and embracing. So it's been fun.
Well, I could say my Strongsville video is one of my most watched videos. So if you go, I do pay attention to these things, and who gets the views and what gets the views, and the show reviews. My 3 of my most watched videos are my Philly show, my National, my Strongsville, and my Shriners. So it was a good way for you to start.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good launch point for sure. So yeah, it's good time.
I should mention, if you're around tomorrow night, I am hosting the 4 Collectors show, the live stream at 9:00. I have 3 fantastic guests. I don't know if the thumbnail's up yet, but it's going to be 3 guys that and so I'm excited about that. Next week is the Saturday of Thanksgiving, so I'm going to do a solo show, and then the week after that, I have another amazing guest. So things are going great in the channel. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. Keep doing what you're doing, because it's going over well. It's been a great run for you so far. So really happy to have you on the show. Thank you for showing this amazing Mordecai Brown collection. And viewers, we will see you back next week.
Thank you.